I have often wondered in what manner I would find my body. The manner and method has never repeated itself. In the parts of my mind that are shadowed and curious, I have sometimes fantasized of a sunny meadow in springtime. The carrion beetles capture gold in their wings as they dance a ballet above my barren bones. Dazzling dewdrops decorate the verdant grasses that serve as my pillow, creating a seeming diadem gleaming about my dreaming skull. But it has never happened that way, and I doubt that it ever will. I was young the first time, a whisper in the ear of 15, and eyes like freshly plucked red roses. I beheld a breeze on my face as magic, or a miracle, and thought not of any trouble it could bring. He spoke in a voice like a purr, whose tumbling tones tranquilized my trembles, but his words hung in the air, curdling and congealing. Hot breath against my skin that thickened the air into a miasma, fogging my thoughts. I began to choke and gasp, but the smog never ceased its emission from his throat. Desperate, I clawed at my neck and waved my arms in a fruitless effort to free myself of the fumes. But another waft of smoke, internal and eternal, suddenly claimed my vision. He smirked at me as I sunk to the ground, billowing clouds of black and gray for my bed. It was a few months before I found her, lying flat on a hard floor, her dark hair fanned out around her head. Her lips were a pale blue line, and her eyes glowed as red as embers. She gazed back at me, recognition in her eyes, and a silent plea wheezing through her teeth. Curious, though, I did not recognize her. Innocuous and indifferent, I carried her off and put her away. Years passed before it happened again, and in my naivete, I had begun to think it never would. But perhaps that was the way it was intended. A silent drip, a quiet trickle. He lived in waves that crashed against soft beach sands, and over months of waiting in the ebb and flow, our toes and fingers had pruned to match. But a wave never makes the same return. One a splash, one a crash. His hands moved like rivulets, poured over uneven ground, spreading, creeping like chains across me until I was completely submerged. Vicious tides tugged and ripped at me, exposing and flooding every niche and crevice. The surface drifted further and further away as the deluge consumed me, pulling me deeper and deeper. Silence roared around me, and my arms fell limp, framing my body. A pirouette to the sea. My breath escaped. 6 bubbles. Vision faded, my open eyes empty, vast, and blue. She washed up after an age. Skin, yellow paper, torn and sloughed off, exposing pale, drowned muscle. A snarl of hair upon her head, tangled in debris and speckles of sand, covering the swollen lips and bulbous eyes. Revolting. I thought to go, to leave her there, but I couldn't. Instead, like the last, I carried her off and put her away. Sometimes, after that, I felt water pooling in my ears, a wetness I could not shake. The earth, in its solid and constant state, had become an altar. I sometimes came to pray, but most often I would lay myself across it and wait, shrouded in the suppressive embrace of sleep. It's in that slumber that his fingers began to wander, exploring caves and hollows that I had thought to have buried. I felt them smear and sully, a dark stain across me, and somehow my arms petrified at my side. A tremble and a rumble, and I was Moses in a sea of brown, shifting around me, grasping cool, uninviting silt and soil, swallowing and swallowed by the earth, the sanctuary I hardly knew, mired, polluted. I became a part of the altar and slept once more. Months of digging is what it took to find her bones. Her flesh, unprotected from the earth's inhabitants, had been eaten away, and a skull, dirty and yellow, with thin strands of red hair, stared back at me. Her empty sockets echoed back in my eyes, but I thought nothing of it. I gathered what I could, then I carried her off and put her away. The last time it happened, the phantom weight of the earth that had buried me had disappeared. 5 years since the first time, and my eyes were thin panes of glass, open and inviting. His hands were the heat of the sun on my skin on a hot summer day. Eyes that blazed in an orange heat. I thought I'd never escape their enveloping gaze. For years I warmed myself in his smoldering, consuming appetite, ignorant of its glowing intensity. Searing, his hands branded me when they touched my flesh, which boiled and blistered. Each touch ignited a new inferno that sought to envelop and destroy me. Unable to stop, unable to drop, unable to roll, I watched my skin curl and darken as the flames licked their way up my arms, and then the heat grew to be too much. I closed my eyes to the girl-shaped charcoal I found the day I went looking. She wasn't too far, and it hadn't taken very long to find her. Her face was gone. The mask of pain and horror melted away, and for that, I felt lucky. Delicately, I scooped her up, carried her off, and put her away. This time, I prepared, laying myself out in the meadow of my fantasy. I let the sunlight caress my face the way I imagined it would, and felt the silvery dew under my fingers, the soft grass between my toes. She moved like a doe amongst the trees, timid and gentle. She lay herself out beside me, her eyes pools of gold. Her touch was fairy wings that begged forgiveness for their presence, and her kiss was a burble of laughter. Before long, she uncovered the covert coffin that I carried, a lone pallbearer. Inside, she found the girl who suffocated, the girl who drowned, the girl who was buried, and the girl who burned. With an open heart and lips like rose petals, she placed a kiss on each of them, and I felt them all. Together we closed the coffin and placed it at the base of our meadow tree. Then, hand in hand, we walked away and journeyed off into the trees. It has been years, and I've had no need to look for a new body. Sometimes I go back to visit the ones that we left at the base of the meadow tree, but they no longer stare back. Able to rest now, they wish me well as I pay them my respects. And the carrion beetles capture gold in their wings as they dance a ballet above their heads, with crowns of dewed diamonds that shine in the sunlight.